Okay, folks, let's call this special general purposes committee meeting to order. One item on the agenda, and it was an item that needed priority, but we didn't want to give it short shrift just as part of a long agenda. So it's the official community plan updates. So John, are you, and what, Suzanne, you're going to give us a outline? Just a minute, let me turn on the mics. Okay, mics are on.
Great. Thank you, Mr. Chair. The report in front of you today is the culmination of 3.5 years of research, consultation, writing, more consultation, and rewriting to prepare significant bylaw amendments to the city's official community plan, or OCP. During this time, a lot has happened on the provincial front, including sweeping changes to planning legislation as it relates to housing and the contents of an OCP. This includes SHMU, TOA, development financing, preparation of an interim housing needs report, and the introduction of new tools such as inclusionary zoning. So what you have in front of you is not a complete rewrite of the OCP, but rather a targeted update, which was endorsed by Council in 2022. Staff are bringing forward the first major set of bylaw amendments to the OCP on housing and environmentally sensitive areas, or ESAs. A second set of bylaw amendments will be brought forward in 2026 to address the other targeted areas related to environmental protection, climate resilience, and equity. For today's report, there are two bylaws attached. Bylaw 10724 largely deals with housing policies and proposes to revise the land use map with a particular emphasis on residential land uses. There's also a revised context chapter, a completely revised housing chapter, and a new regional context statement as part of the Metro Vancouver requirement. Bylaw 10725, on the other hand, includes a revised ESA map and revised ESA DP objectives, exemption criteria, and guidelines. There are 8 recommendations included in this report. The first 2 include consideration of first reading to both Bylaw 10724 and 10725. The third recommendation is a requirement of the Local Government Act, where we must ensure the OCP amendments are consistent with the city's financial plan and capital programs and the GVRD solid waste and liquid waste management plans. The fourth and fifth recommendation ensure that the OCP amendments have been considered by multiple external agencies, and the bylaws will be referred to the Agricultural Land Commission as per the Local Government Act and the Richmond School Board for comment as per council policy. The sixth recommendation is to refer the revised regional context statement for acceptance by the Metro Vancouver Board, and this is a requirement of their regional growth strategy. The seventh recommendation is to rescind the long-standing single-family lot size policy, as it will be replaced by a guiding subdivision map in the revised OCP. And lastly, the eighth recommendation addresses 2 development applications that have an OCP amendment at third reading, which should be adopted prior to adoption of the OCP amendment bylaw. The last significant update of the OCP guided growth from approximately 200,000 people in 2012 to more than 240,000 in 2025. It also transformed the city centre, secured amenities, parks, and rental housing such as Lemur and market rental housing, and focused growth outside the city centre along arterial roads and in areas with a defined sub-area plan. This OCP update, coined as OCP 2050, builds upon those previous achievements and includes a defined growth management framework. It will guide growth from 240,000 residents today to over 300,000 in 2050. It will also ensure there's enough capacity for 52,000 new homes over the next 20 years, which is in keeping with the interim housing needs report. OCP 2050 provides council with tools to manage the city's growth narrative, notwithstanding the limiting effects of provincial housing legislation on local government autonomy as it relates to land use planning. It also supports development that builds housing that is more affordable for more households and encourages more rental housing. This is the land use map here to begin with, retains agriculture, mixed employment, industrial, and conservation lands. Rather, the revised land use map of OCP 2050 directs growth to a citywide network of walkable, mixed-use, transit-oriented villages. In order to accomplish this vision, residential land uses have been categorized into 5 complementary neighborhood types, including city center downtown, city center perimeter, local villages, arterial connectors, neighborhood residential. And I'll just provide a quick summary of each. The city center downtown neighborhood type would essentially reflect the province's TOA policies. That is, densities ranging from a 3 to a 5 floor area ratio, or 8 to 15 stories. Up until recently, the city used density bonusing with much success to secure amenities, commercial space, and affordable housing. Within TOA, we can only use density bonusing above and beyond what the province has prescribed as a minimum density and building height in TOA. So that presents a problem. As such, new policy tools are introduced in the OCP to secure complete village space for amenities such as healthcare facilities or childcare. And later in 2026, we'll be bringing forward inclusionary zoning for council's consideration to secure affordable housing, such as Lemur. The city center perimeter neighborhood type includes the areas surrounding the city center, largely outside of TOA. Those areas have existing multifamily development and would still be subject to existing area plans. There's no intention to change the fabric of those areas. However, there are 2 exceptions. First is the increased opportunity near Gilbert and Westminster Highway due to its proximity to Richmond Hospital to create a hospital precinct area. This would provide opportunities for housing for hospital workers and healthcare professionals, and also clinics and services related to healthcare. A village center bonus has been given to this area to incentivize housing and healthcare opportunities. The other area is the Oaks neighborhood. This is the neighborhood to the east of Capstan Station area. The western part of this neighborhood is impacted by TOA, where up to 8-story residential buildings can be considered, and the remaining part of the neighborhood is zoned for SHMU. But there may be an opportunity to consider townhouses and other lower density housing. And keep in mind, this is a single-family neighborhood. So as such, an area planning process would be required to determine the appropriate land uses, densities, amenities, and street pattern, and this would be conducted following the update of the OCP. The local village neighborhood type includes several existing shopping centers and properties that are adjacent to them. There are 2 tiers for local villages. The first tier would allow up to 4-story apartments if it were mixed tenure, and up to 6-story apartment if it were 100% rental. Commercial uses in this tier would be at grade. For Tier 2, these are areas that are typically along the arterial road just beyond the local village intersection and would allow up to 3 stories or up to 4 stories with increased affordability subject to rezoning. Since the last round of consultation, this neighborhood type has been reduced in area, and for Tier 2, the building typology has been reduced and will be subject to further consultation. That consultation, which would follow adoption of the revised OCP, would include discussions on potentially expanding the local village neighborhood type to incorporate remnant properties or complete blocks that would create better opportunities for redevelopment, and would also determine design considerations such as the establishment of a high street with pedestrian-oriented retail and commercial uses. This additional consultation effort in collaboration with the surrounding community would help create a planning framework that would cater to unique characteristics of the surrounding area. The arterial connectors neighborhood type essentially builds upon a long-standing arterial road land use policy, which promotes a range of compact single-family lots, duplexes, and low-rise townhouses. With the recent SHMU legislation changing the fabric of former single-family lots, there's a need to look at encouraging lot assemblies along arterial roads through greater flexibility in what is permitted along those corridors. Most of the arterial connector neighborhood types are under Tier 1. This tier would allow up to 3-story townhouses if it were mixed tenure, and up to 4-story apartments for 100% rental. And this, once again, is all subject to a council-approved rezoning. The second tier covers any sites that are commercial, largely the old corner stores or gas stations along arterial roads. And for those sites, any redevelopment would require commercial, and only retail residential can be built above. And the fifth neighborhood type, the neighborhood residential, largely reflects the allowance of SHMU, small-scale multi-unit housing. No longer can these areas be considered single-family anymore. However, the option to build single-family or multiplexes is available, which will provide a range of low-density, ground-oriented housing in the long run. There is no change to building height or density. As in each of the neighborhood types, there are two tiers under neighborhood residential. Lots less than an acre are under Tier 1, which is the new RSM zone that allows SHMU. For lots that are over 1 acre in these neighborhoods, they are not impacted by the SHMU legislation or Bill 44. Those sites are typically existing townhouse complexes, and those sites would have the ability through a council-approved rezoning to develop into 3 or 4-story townhouses or low-rise apartments, and could potentially increase up to 6 stories if it's 100% rental includes lemur units. The introduction of SHMU has essentially made single-family development optional, and this has also made the long-standing single-family lot size policy somewhat redundant. The new RSM zone is designed to reflect the varying lot sizes, includes a small, medium, large, and extra-large zone. OCP 2050 includes a consolidated map for all SHMU neighborhoods that informs minimum lot size intentions for the purpose of guiding situations where rezoning may be considered for the purpose of subdividing. Outside of the neighborhood types, there are a couple key policies that I would like to highlight. First, OCP 2050 introduces a form-based approach to development. In particular, it aims to address the adjacencies between the neighborhood residential neighborhood types, or SHMU, and the arterial connector and local village neighborhood types. The intention is to make clear the intended built form and building type to provide transparency, respect neighbors, and give developers the clarity and flexibility needed to deliver housing. A form-based approach will minimize unwanted impacts to SHMU areas and provide more predicted outcomes. Many of the policies focus on best practices for housing. That is, ensure there's a balance between other initiatives such as accessibility targets and preservation of natural areas to increase housing supply and affordability. Also, the policies aim to make it easier to build the intended housing with consideration for strategic pre-zoning, density incentives in key areas, and ensuring approvals are streamlined. In particular, OCP 2050 encourages more opportunities for wood frame construction and apply home building models where applicable. OCP 2050 also provides opportunities for senior housing facilities and other target market areas or target markets through the Complete Village Space Overlay designation. In addition to market-based housing, OCP 2050 includes policies to guide stronger partnerships with senior levels of government, nonprofits, and developers to increase development of below-market and non-market housing. And non-market housing can also be enabled at key government-owned sites such as Metro Vancouver Housing Corporation through a Complete Village Space Overlay. As indicated in the various neighborhood types, there are a number of ways that amenities can be secured. Within TOA or the city center neighborhood type, there would be a mandatory requirement to secure space as determined by council for the provision of healthcare, childcare, adult day programs, social services, or cultural and arts facilities. That space could be operated for profit or not for profit. For areas outside of TOA, an incentive-based approach is used, including the Village Center bonus in the city center perimeter areas and the Complete Village Space Overlay on selected government or church-based properties. With respect to area plans, there are no changes at this time. If there is conflict regarding a land use designation, that is, one is residential or commercial, the area plan would apply. Whereas there is the same land use designation between the OCP and the area plan, and the OCP provides more height, density, or uses, the OCP would apply. The only exception is the Steveston Village Heritage Conservation Area. Updates to area plans will also follow adoption of the OCP. As part of the targeted update of the OCP, there was a need to update the ESA and review the associated guidelines. Through a science-based approach, using detailed aerial photography and selected site visits, there has been a concerted effort to ensure the accuracy of the ESA map. Virtually all of the additional ESA areas include public lands, such as the inclusion of Richmond Nature Park, Sea Island Conservation Area, Sturgeon Banks, Gary Point Park, to name a few. There's also been fine-tuning of some ESA polygons on private lands, for example, lands adjacent to the Bridgeport Trail and selective areas in the Hamilton area. The intention of the ESA polygon is to act as a flag that there's an environmental asset that needs a closer look and shouldn't be confused with some of the provincial requirements or provincially protected areas that are being proposed or that exist today. The ESA objectives, exemptions, guidelines have all been reviewed and revised to simplify and provide greater clarity to the ESA development permit or exemption process. There is greater emphasis placed on the objectives for each of the 4 ESA types in order to outline specific criteria for all the outcomes that are being sought in relation to the natural environment, as well as communicate expectations and justify the designation. The proposed 4 ESA categories include marine, terrestrial, natural freshwater influenced, and disturbed freshwater influenced. This, like, as I mentioned earlier, this does not include provincially protected features such as riparian corridors, raptor nests, or wetlands. ESAs are managed by the local government and provide guidelines on how to protect and enhance in the face of development. There's greater clarity and new exemption criteria added for situations where a DP is not required. This includes ESA DP exemptions for park and conservancy lands overseen by senior levels of government, agricultural activities within the ALR, and small-scale invasive species and noxious weed removal. The proposed ESA DP guidelines are reorganized by the 4 ESA types and remain similar to the existing guidelines. The principal difference with the proposed ESA DP guidelines is the clear focus of striving for the multiple objectives of preserving, restoring, and enhancing ESAs, and striving for no net loss of high-value habitat while recognizing the context of accommodating the density and other related entitlements of development based on zoning. A requirement of this OCP update is to submit a revised regional context statement to Metro Vancouver for acceptance. This is a requirement of all member municipalities to have a regional context statement accepted prior to bylaw adoption. This is to reflect that local land use policies are consistent with regional policies. The last regional growth strategy was updated in 2023. It is anticipated that Metro Vancouver would consider the proposed RCS for their January board meeting, meaning that the bylaw adoption could occur in February. Following bylaw adoption, a series of supporting projects would follow. This would include addressing Planning Committee's referral for the Aberdeen and Bridgeport village areas of the city centre to investigate the merits and technical procedure for changing the OCP and urban village plan for the intended use of mixed use and high-density residential and rental in these areas. Staff will bring forward a report in response to this referral in Q1 of 2026. Another required project is introducing inclusionary zoning for TOA or TOA. Bylaws will be brought forward before the end of Q2 of 2026, which is a provincial deadline. Other work includes initiating consultation on the local village concept and the Oaks neighborhood, reviewing and revising existing design guidelines, updates to area plans as required, and to complete part 2 of the OCP targeted update. And with that, I will be happy to take any questions.
Okay, so who wants to go first? Any questions? Councillor Heed.
Yeah, and I thought I'd go first because the last point, which you probably have an idea I'm going to bring up, that's with the referral on the Aberdeen Bridgeport Village area. I think you're aware that this is a significant issue for me, and I'm just wondering why it's going to take that period of time to look at it, because specifically, as you know, we were looking at that area because of the close proximity to our arterial routes such as the bridges, the freeway, the fact that we have transit in that area, the Candle Line, and you know there's interest in people building specific type of housing in that area. And, you know, I've made a comment regarding this term employment lands. So can you just give me some context in that, why it's going to take a while, and if we're anywhere with respect to that, because that's a significant issue for me.
Through the chair to Councillor Heed, what I can say to that is there's a fair amount of work that will have to be done to look at the changes. This isn't simply just a change color on the map. We would need to consult with YVR. We need to consult with the province as well, because this would also trigger TOA for those areas as far as minimum densities are concerned. And once again, YVR, we've had a long-standing agreement with them that those areas would be non-residential under the flight path. We also have a economic development strategy at the moment looking at our employment land, so we would need to understand the impacts there. We intend to provide a response to council in the first quarter by the end of March, outlining the merits of such a change and what the procedure would be. And at that point, we can take direction. If there's interest in making those amendments, then we can take that direction and start that process. But we will have early conversations in the beginning of the new year on what's involved as far as changing those designations, including servicing as well.
Okay, and my last part here, and then I'll come back later. But can we, for example, transit-oriented area, and we know especially when we talk about Brown Gate and what's going on there, and Leslie, can we, in our bylaws, make it specific on the type of residential we could have? For example, a type of rental or something like that? Or are we bound by TOA regardless?
Yeah, through the chair to Councillor Heed, I would say we would have to have those conversations with the province, because right now TOA would be triggered, and it would essentially create a concentric ring around the transit station, and I'm not aware of where they would consider specific properties only for certain types of residential. So those are conversations that we would have to see if there's that possibility.
And the point I want to make here is we've got it designated something right now which prevents TOA from kicking in. And I guess I'm just looking for some type of.
Yeah, through the chair to Councillor Heed, yes, when TOA came in and we had the bylaws adopted and sent to the province for approval, those two areas were essentially approved by the province as non-residential areas. And it was essentially reflecting a long-term council policy that I understand, could be reconsidered, but the province respected the fact that those are non-residential areas and approved our bylaw.
So we expect something back March.
Yes.
Great, thank you.
Councillor McNulty.
Yeah, thanks very much. Thanks for all the work everybody has put into this. I do have a couple of questions and see what. One of the things that, on a couple of these, when I put the resident forward, and I'll just follow up on the Leslie Road in Brown Gate. I'm only looking at those areas. I'm not looking at everything else beside it, et cetera. I'm looking at specific areas on that, and Vanguard and Beckwith, and the same is we're talking specific, basically 30 lots or 40 lots. We're not talking about redeveloping the whole thing. And the bottom line there is an opportunity for rental and low-income rental right in the downtown core. So I think it's important for us to do that. I have about 4 or 5 things, Your Worship. Number one, the longstanding agreement with the airport. I'd like to see that agreement and a copy of that, and I'd like to know when it was discussed and by whom.
It was discussed by us about 10 years,
Yeah,
10,
that's
12
what-
years ago
yeah.
with the red zones,
Yeah.
where we're under the
But
flight.
I'd like to, but not everybody here was here 10 or 12 years ago.
Oh, refresh it by all
So
means.
I'm just saying,
Wayne?
Thank you. Through the chair to Councillor McNulty, we will definitely provide you the background on the aircraft noise policy. I can tell you that policy was adopted by council in 2004. So these areas have been designated as non-residential for over 20 years.
I'm not questioning that. What I'm saying is I think we need to see it, see what was done, and then I think we need to have a meeting with YVR and NAV Canada to talk about our community that's being dictated in some areas by them. So the other thing related to that is on page 57, GP 57, having a look at that map, and I don't need an answer tonight, but I see all kinds of colors under the flight path. If indeed the agreement we had in 2004, we should have one color. Can't build under the flight path, but that's what we always fall back on. So I'm just pointing things out. I think these need to be answered, not only for now, but for futures, okay? You're talking about 300 and some thousand people, okay? Someone can be under the flight path, okay? But we don't want to talk about that now. It's 2004. No, I want to bring it forward and let's talk about it And not, it's not a criticism, it's a fact. I'm going to deal with facts if I can. Did I miss something about, in the report, about the 39% of farming in Richmond, in land for farming? Did I miss something about how we might deal with some of those? Everything from increased watering, increased whatever along the line? Yeah,
Through the chair. Through the chair to Councillor McNulty, farming or the lands within the ALR were not, there's no changes within this targeted update. There was a farming first strategy adopted by council a couple of years ago that addressed a lot of the
And we have an ag, but
It's still
did I miss it?
39%.
It was in here somewhere? Did I
don't-
miss it? I don't, you find it
Agricultural
now,
lands have been
but it
retained.
should be part of our report is what I'm getting at, okay? It should be in, if you're dealing with it, we got to deal with the whole island and the 21 smaller islands. Is there any comments in here with regard to the amenities in terms of projected growth down the road? We only have 5 major shopping centers, maybe 6, you could push it. That's for food outlets, doctors, gas stations, shopping, et cetera. Have we made any statements with it? Given the increased growth at 2050, we would see, let's say, from 7 to gas stations, we would need 10. From, 1 hospital, we may need 8 clinics and 1 in Hamilton and 1, et cetera. Is there anything there to go with the other side of just housing?
Through the chair to Councillor McNulty, I don't have specific metrics, which I think is what you're looking for. But what I can say is that we have a detailed policy framework on bringing more amenities within citywide. As mentioned earlier, city center is going to be a requirement because we can't use density bonusing to achieve amenities. So there'll be a requirement, and then outside of that, it's completely incentive-based where you can get additional density if you provide key amenities. So we expect through that policy framework that we would see mixed-use communities with the appropriate amenities.
Yeah, I thought we recommended last night, thanks to the planning committee, a very major step in a direction that most communities wouldn't take with the idea of putting an amenity in a residential area, which is probably something in the future. So that was positive. Was there a statement here with regard to infrastructures of water, sewer in relation to transportation like buses and trains? Has anybody said we need the SkyTrain to get that third car on there, expand their thing? I mean, I think that's part of our statement. It's no disrespect, but the report is housing only. Well, Victoria's got to remember people live in communities and have other things other than their house. And so I didn't see anything there. It's something I think we need to put in on it. The other item I have, and that is parking in the downtown core. If you go by Cook Elementary School or go by Burnett or probably any school, my colleague across the way here, teacher could tell you about, I call it the Le Mans 500 too, at between 8:15 and 9 o'clock and the 3 o'clock, is in the downtown, we're talking about maybe possibly no parking, whatever, but if they have children in there, Richmond parents are going to drive their kids 1.5 blocks to school. That is a reality, okay? And so we need to rethink that. And I would like to know how the distances to the train from 200 meters, 400 meters, and 800 meters was arrived. I think, given what we have, I think they need to be expanded. But how were they arrived for a committee?
Through the chair to Councillor McNulty, those were arrived from the province's transit-oriented area legislation, concentric circles essentially around the Canada Line
So
stations.
they must have got those from Victoria, from the Parliament buildings, 200 meters, and then Parliament buildings, 400 meters, et cetera. Yeah, it probably came from there because I don't know what city that I've been to or municipality that has 200 meters from even a bus stop, let alone that So it would be a question, can we change those?
Through the chair to Councilor McNulty, no, it is provincial legislation. We're abided.
It's a
by the-
fallacy of
yeah.
of what they're trying to do. And I guess my next question is, Mr. Mayor, my last question, what are we going to do if indeed, in months down the road, that the current government is not in power and this gets thrown out?
All we can do is send it over
Yeah.
and
I'm
discuss
just
it.
curious.
Through the chair to Councilor McNulty, yes, there's no question this is providing the current framework. I don't think it's significantly different from what we have in the city center area plan. It's in keeping. Hard to speculate at this point.
So this really wouldn't change then, because this would be our plan, not their plan. But would we change anything from that plan for us?
Through the chair to Councilor McNulty, what I would say is that we are trying to add our flavor to the plan here, working with the provincial requirements.
Okay, all right, thank you. That's all for now.
Councilor Wolf.
Thanks. First off, where's the full list of sections? So bylaw 10724 includes section 1, the introduction, section 3, neighborhoods and housing. How many sections are there in total? And are they listed somewhere? I haven't been able to look.
Through the chair to Councilor Wolf, I believe it's around 12 sections approximately. Yeah,
Should I-
I'm not sure if you know.
Should I find them somewhere
Is that-
in here? No.
No, through the chair, I'm sorry, I don't know the total number, but there's more than 13.
Yeah.
13 is infrastructure, so.
Yeah, sorry, and through the chair to Councilor Wolf, yeah, and chapter 14 is development permits, so essentially 12 policy-related chapters, although the first chapter is context-based and is policy-focused.
Okay. Yeah, I'd just like to see what we're actually approving here and how some things are being pushed to next year. Just like to see that scale of things. When the term, I'm going to jump all over the place here for a little bit. When you mentioned High Street, as you said in your initial presentation there, and there was a reference in here to Steveston as having a High Street. To me, out in Hamilton, Gilly's a High Street because it's like it's high.
Yeah.
Is that what we're talking about in the future when you're talking about High Street planning and pedestrian-friendly high streets? Or is it like looking at Steveston now as well? Is that considered high streets?
Through the chair to Councillor Wolf, so the term High Street is generally used to refer not to the topography or the specific design, but to the idea that it has small-scale pedestrian-oriented shops, can have large shops also, and that it's designed to be very walkable, and usually at the heart of a community where there's good connections for people to walk or take other active transportation to get there. So that's the focus. So you would be quite correct that Steveston would be, in Richmond, probably the most developed and most loved high streets area that we've got. But certainly the street that is developing in Hamilton is intended to be Hamilton's version of that. And each of the villages that are identified on this update to the OCP would be expected to each adopt their own individual character over time.
Okay, thanks. Yeah, it mentions the Richmond's favorite village, High Street is 69, on page 69, but I guess I live by an exceptionally high street on Gilly in Westminster. Okay, next, I found that there's a map here that's kind of, I'm not going to talk about Hamilton too much, but I feel like Hamilton's cut off on your lot size map here on page 94. It includes all of the rest of Richmond, but then at the top of our page 94, we don't really see the rest, and I don't see this map and this detail in other locations. So anyway, I'm just being picky on that one. Okay, then I'll start talking about the Green Infrastructure Network, the GIN, and I went into detail looking into the regional context in the Metro plan and the responses to all that. So I'll just comment from starting at page 125 and working my way up. Sorry here, but so I liked a number of the parts in there, and I spoke with staff or emailed with staff earlier about the 7 constructed wetlands that we have, and I think the fact that we're identifying those as green infrastructure and seeing the need to include them into the ESA map, are all things going in the right direction. I also can see the kind of the priority for potential land acquisitions to support green infrastructure, needing to do that before some of those green infrastructure sites get drained or changed, because they will no longer have the value that is mentioned well in this section. Okay, I'll move on. Then the ecosystem expansion areas, I really valued that. There's a couple sections where what came to mind was the recent council decision to send the sand and truck lot at the corner of Williams and Triangle to the ALR, to potentially remove it from the ALR. Because from a lot of what I read in here, it really justified why staff recommended we not do that, because of the asset and keeping it intact. And there was just, I think, a lot of strength in staff's written direction here for prioritizing agricultural land. And then there was a section even that mentioned right to farm. And I don't know, is there anything different in this when it comes to, I'm just pulling this from the environmental and sensitive area update portion of the bylaw on page 195, where it talks about right to farm, because I remember in that situation, the sand and the truck parking, they use the right to farm to clear an ESA, but there's no intention to farm. They right away say, their agrologist said, it's not possible to farm here, it's not suitable. So why would they be allowed to use that right to farm act? Do we have any strength in wording here to prevent that?
Through the chair to Councillor Wolf, I think the real challenge is the definition of farming includes clearing the land. So they obviously took advantage of that, obviously hoping that there would be intention to farm, which they did not. That they were farming other parts of that site. So because they were considered farmers at that point, sort of, I would say, got away with it. But if there's a non-farm use that is proposed for the site, then they would have to go through an ESA DP.
Thanks. And just to, I'm going to carry on here a little bit more. I can't remember where the section was, but it also highlighted the potential to improve drainage and watering for areas. And that's, again, an area where they're already farming on that site and improvements could be made. And there was highlight somewhere in here that could be done better and expanded. The next section I'll go to is kind of related to enhancing ecological assets. Don't have to speak too much of that, but I like the highlighting working with adjacent member jurisdictions. I don't think that is done, but on kind of page 155, it highlights ways that we can do that as an island natural environment, perhaps working with New West Queensborough as they share part of the island area. Richmond taking a bit of a lead in FREMP, and that's highlighted in this section as well, which on our ESA map kind of highlights the fact that if FREMP doesn't exist, we can make mention of what those lands should or should not be used for. There was a section on, oh yeah, invasives, that was all good. Where's my next one? Okay, and then I guess I can just skip along here to the last section, which is related to ESA again. Lost my page. Where's it? Oh, 192. Oh, the question I had was at the bottom, 192 and to 193, it mentions in the event of a conflict between the ESA development permit areas, and those contained in area plans or sub-area plans, the latter shall apply. And then later on, the latter shall take precedent. Could you just explain a little bit about that? So, like, do you know what I'm asking there? Is like, if something is ESA, but something else in the area plan says it should be residential, does that just mean the ESA designation gets removed and it gets built?
Through the chair to Councillor Wolf, I would say that the area plans typically would have more detail, but if there is an additional detail on the ESA, the ESA requirement would still be there. It wouldn't remove it if there wasn't further information in the area plan. So if there's conflicting information regarding ESAs and there's something more strict or go in a different direction in the area plan, then the area plan would prevail.
Okay. All right, and then I think my last thing is not from this section, but the ESA map itself, either on page 199 or 208, or this big giant map. So there was a number of areas I was hoping would be included and were. So I'll start with those positive ones. So I like the fact on here, Pollock Park is now is officially on the ESA map. Swiss Swash Island is fully included. More of Terra Nova, not all of it, but more of it. The IKEA, not the IKEA we go to, but the IKEA distribution center. The drainage canals are included. More of the Hamilton Highway Park, Olive Shady or Steveston Island, the Steveston Community Park Forest, the River Rock Casino enhancement areas, the Bridgeport Trail, Pollinator Pathways, Dawn and Lion Islands, and yep. I'm just, okay. Yeah, so I thought those were good, but then I'm just curious, how can we find out why some of the areas didn't make the list when I know they were being considered? Because I mentioned them to staff and staff brought them to, I don't know if it's a Diamond Head, is that what the group was called? So like, is there a summary of why places like the Odlinwood ESA, Iona, all of Iona Island, Geary Point Park, not more of Geary Point Park was included, the West Richmond Pitch and Putt Forest, the Tree Farm, Kwantland Gardens at South Gilbert. Yeah.
Through the chair to Councillor Wolf, we actually have one of our consultants from Diamond Head here, could actually speak to that criteria. Perhaps can provide a bit of a response if you like.
Sure, but is there also like a written report I can look at for things that didn't make the cut, kind of thing? Or?
Hi, my name is Allison. I'm a professional biologist at Diamond Head Consulting, and I'm the project manager of the ESA mapping update. Sorry, Councilor Wolf, would you be able to repeat your question?
Priorities.
Yeah,
How did you establish?
Oh, me and my team conducted site visits for some of the additional areas that you had indicated should be included. And based on our assessment with the definition of what we consider to be ESAs, based on the categories of oilfield habitat, terrestrial ecosystems, which include oilfield habitat, mature forests, marine, shoreline, freshwater ecosystems, some of those parts don't follow and don't fall under those categories. So based on our assessment, they were excluded from the ESA mapping.
So just to follow up, then can I find out, like, is it written down? Is it specifically for ones that didn't make the cut, but you looked at?
Yes, we did provide a summary memo of all the sites we visited, along with the rationale for why they were included or were not included into the ESA mapping. City staff will have that.
Oh, and that can be shared?
Through the chair to Councillor Wolf, we can provide that information.
Can it be shared before council?
I believe we can.
I believe
We
that,
can,
yeah.
yes.
Okay, great, I'll leave it there, thanks.
All right, Councillor Hobbs.
Thank you, and through the chair. First of all, thanks for the report, another report. And, you know, thanks for the incredible amount of work that's gone in here. I think we all realize that this is largely due to some of the provincial legislation that's come through, so it's necessitated a lot of work and some changes. I'm not going to talk about everything I like, because there is a lot in here that I do like. But the two areas of major concern for me involve the local village areas, Tier 1, but mostly Tier 2, and also the arterial connection policy. So I'll just make a couple comments, and feel free to correct me when I'm wrong. But, you know, I've heard this described as aspirational, and I think it is in many ways, but just generally the concern I have is that when you have aspirational goals or plans, you know, you should be happy with what it looks like if you achieve 100% of your aspiration. And if I look at this in terms of Tier 2, in particular, on the arterial road policy as presented in the report, if that came to be 100%, 30 years from now, I don't think I'd be pleased with that as a concept. So that's the general concern. When it comes to the ESA 10725, I support that. But just regarding the land use, if I have it, in my mind correct, I'll just quickly outline the concerns and why I may not support this one tonight. And that is that when you move out from a Tier 1, like at Garden City, for instance, on the map in the dark purple, you can go 4-story, 1 commercial, 3 residential. You can go up to 5 if it's market rental, up to 6 stories if it includes affordable housing. And that's all good. So that's the Tier 1 in almost all the locations. I think that looks really good. And even on that one where you branch out to the Tier 2 and go west along Blundell Road, that one kind of makes sense because, there's an existing commercial site, the small mall on the west side of Garden City at Blundell. And also there's a school field or there's fields to the south and some townhomes. So that one kind of makes sense. But my concern would be with Tier 2 is when you move to some other sites like Terra Nova and you start heading east on Westminster Highway or south on Number 1 Road, you're getting into a situation where my understanding is that we'd be having 3-story townhomes and up to 4-story market rentals. And I know it all comes back to council for rezoning, but as I mentioned before, I think what this does is it creates expectations on the part of some people who may be looking to build, and it can create anxiety for people that might live around it, fearing what might be built. And I know some people might say that's NIMBY, but it's also dealing with people's lives and major investments. So my concern would be when we get into town houses on arterial roads, this calls for, and it's on page GP 89, the diagram, that can be 3-story townhomes front and back. And that's a departure from what we do now generally, 3 stories front, 2 stories back. So that's one concern I have. I don't agree. I don't think with having 3 stories front and back. And if you look on page 89, I'm actually not reassured, even though a lot of work has gone into the setbacks and the massing of the building to lessen the impact that would have. And then when it comes to market rental, we can go up to 4 stories. And that applies, I believe, to the arterial roads as well, extending out from the Tier 1. So I think that if you look at that map, and hypothetically, if you met your aspiration and had all of that filled in with 4-story apartment buildings, which are needed, I'd still be concerned with the impact that had overall on the neighborhood. And so those are the basic concerns. I don't want to drone on about it because I've had lots of conversations about this, but I'm very concerned with that. The Tier 2 extension from the Tier 1 local area village, and that's my concern when you extend too far out. And I get the 5-minute walk and the 400 meters. However we want to define that, I would say that if we had something where we looked at it on a case-by-case basis, which I know we will ultimately because it comes to rezoning, then I think that's something I'd be willing to look at. But just having it, on the map as something that sets an expectation that somebody will be able to do it, and they come to council and then we say no for various reasons, that's one thing. And I think I'll just end with this one for now through the chair, is that I understand there's a push-pull between what was our arterial road policy before, which I thought was really good, and the push-pull is created by the provincial legislation that now makes it perhaps more economically viable or practical for builders or developers to do a small multiplex unit, also known as SHMU. It might be more affordable to do that and more practical and a quicker turnaround maybe on the product than it is to do what we were doing before with townhouses, 3 at the front, 2 at the back. And so we're trying to incentivize it to allow 4-story apartment buildings for rental maybe, and then the 3 at the front, 3 at the back. I get that. I guess what I'm saying is if I get a binary choice between one of those 2 options and the SHMU, I might actually just go with the SHMU, even though it means more driveways and everything on the road. So those are my concerns. You might have a comment on that, I don't know, but That's a serious concern.
Sure, yeah. Through the chair to Councillor Hobbs, a few observations I would make. First off, with the arterial road land use policy was first endorsed by council, I believe, around 1999, 2000 in that area. So the policy's been in place for 25 years. What I would say is that there's a variety of housing that you find on arterial roads. I don't believe you will see a wall of 4-story buildings in 20, 30 years. The intention is to provide some variety. There may be some 4-story rental, there might be some 3-story townhouse, and you would still see some laneway housing and other types of housing along the arterial road. So I don't know if we're necessarily trying to aspire to, like I say, 4-story kind of buildings throughout the arterial roads. But so I just wanted to make that kind of observation. So the policy does allow for some flexibility. It is designed to be much more urban, where it's bringing the buildings much more forward and closer to the front lot line and providing ample space in the rear lot line so that there's a separation between the SHMU lot and the and either the apartment or the townhouse property. And the setbacks would be wide enough that you could still provide some landscaping, recognizing there is also sewer right-of-ways in the rear yard. So there's enough separation, and there's room for landscaping as well. So a lot of those things have been taken into consideration. And the last thing I'll just add too is the purpose of the form-based approach in the OCP is to provide some clarity and surety for developers and for staff. When an application comes forward for rezoning, it would be much more easy to assess through this form-based policy rather than kind of guessing on a case-by-case basis and bringing something forward that, ultimately was not really appropriate. I think this would provide much more clarity in what is permitted and what is beyond consideration. I don't know if Ms. Carter would have anything else to add.
Through the chair, I think the only thing that I can add is that we have had some financial testing done because we needed to do that in order to take next steps. So we had Urban Systems look at a number of things. Townhouses tested very well. There is a shortage of opportunities for families, and so opportunities to provide more town housing is something that is really key. There is also strong testing for rental, but given the opportunity of townhouses versus rental, the information that we have at this preliminary stage would be townhouses in these locations outside the city center would be the first choice that builders and the market would generally look to, and rental would probably be most attractive to nonprofits or government agencies that were looking for opportunities to provide dispersed rental housing across the city.
Sure, and just one quick follow-up through the chair if I can. And on those points, thanks very much for those. That's excellent info. But if we didn't have tier 2 as described in this report, as we have at Francis and Number 3 Road and Francis at Garden City in improving rental buildings, that's something people can still come forward to us with, and we can still look at those on a case-by-case basis. Is that correct?
Through the chair to Councillor Hobbs, in the current framework right now, I would say that we don't have a clear policy on what would be considered at those corner lots. So right now, we basically allow higher densities if there's increased affordability, but it doesn't provide that sort of how high, how big. So it is somewhat considered on a case-by-case basis. And I think the two you're talking about would be considered tier 2 in the arterial connector, as those are former corner stores, essentially. Right. One thing I was just going to add too is there's a real focus on wood frame construction in this OCP update, and that really is the only area that there is some financial feasibility. I mean, we're in a difficult time right now, especially with concrete, and so I think the emphasis on wood frame and providing incentives for rental for wood frame will be well received.
Yeah, those are good points too. Thank you very much.
Councillor Gillanders.
Thank you, through the chair. Thank you for all of your work on this, a tremendous amount of work. It's great. Can you just explain to me quickly what, so this is the first installment of the bylaws, so this is going to first reading, and then how does this affect, like, what would be the difference in a SHMU application that's in stream versus in the spring one, this is in effect? Like with regards to DCCs or anything else, building permit times or anything like that?
Through the chair to Councillor Glanders, there would be no impact. Those SHMU lots are pre-zoned, and there's no changes associated with the OCP update. There's two applications right now at third reading that would look at amending the OCP. We would, one of the recommendations is those bylaws should be adopted before this one is adopted, just to ensure consistency.
So you gave the little timeline, but what's the next step for the next installment?
Yeah, through the chair to Councillor Glanders, the next installment deals with really the other targeted areas that haven't been addressed in this report, which I mentioned is environmental protection, climate resilience, and equity. A lot of work has been put into those areas. We hope to bring forward a report in 2026. The timing of it, it's a little hard to commit to because we do have the referral to respond to inclusionary zoning, but it would be in sometime in 2026, we'd bring forward those remaining amendments to the OCP.
Okay. On GP8, where it says, Richmond is subject to a ministerial order that specifies the city needs to provide at least 6,753 net new homes over a 5-year period. What does it mean by the city needs to provide it? Like, create the conditions for it? Like, how can we control what the market brings?
Through the chair to Councillor Glanders, so this is the housing target order that's been imposed on ourselves and plus many other municipalities across the province. I think there was even a news release about, I think, a 1-year or 2-year update for some other municipalities. We're probably going to be in good shape for the first year or so. It might be a challenge as we move forward, but I don't believe we're the only ones that are going to be in that situation. This number here is definitely less than the housing needs report numbers. They're achievable targets, but the economic situation will make it difficult a few years down the road.
So it's just that they want us to make it that the market brings that amount.
Through the chair to Councillor Glanders.
It's not that we have to build them if we don't.
No, that's, we're essentially enablers, although we are, with non-market housing, we're certainly much more involved in bringing that forward, but we are not the ones that are building them.
Okay. And then when it comes to the lack of the inclusion, the density bonus to get the lemur, you explained how now there'll be mandated childcare community amenity. But what about the lemur part of it? How do we get that? Again, I just can't remember.
Yeah, through the chair to Councillor Glanders, so up until now, we're using density bonusing to achieve lemur. Yep. After June of next year, we cannot use density bonusing for that minimum density within TOA. Inclusionary zoning is a new tool that the province is allowing municipalities to use, which basically will prescribe how much lemur and would be required. We certainly will start with where the current policy is right now, and we're doing a lot of that economic testing, and we'll be bringing forward those bylaws in the first half of next year.
Okay. And then when it comes to the single lot policies, so getting rid of the old ones and bringing in new single lot policies, is that going to change how we deal with the larger lots because the way we do our FAR, most of the FARs in the first 5,000, so a big lot is actually better to be subdivided if you're going to maximize the SMU units. Are we going to have some sort of a policy for that?
Through the chair to Councillor Glanders, certainly the FAR wouldn't change if a lot was subdivided. It will address some remnant properties that are maybe quite large along a block that has maybe smaller lots. Yeah. And if the map indicates that, that one you could subdivide into 2 small RSM lots, then you still have to go through rezoning, but that's what that map will guide. It won't necessarily, like if there's a situation where there is somebody wants to subdivide and everybody already is a narrow lot, our subdivision map wouldn't support that, and we would probably come forward with a negative recommendation.
Right.
Yeah.
Okay.
Or discourage.
So going to Councillor Hobbs' discussion on the Tier 2 stuff. So looking at the map, the Terra Nova example that Andy gave, so going southbound from Terra Nova Village, on the west side of one road there, it's already all townhouses anyway.
Yes, that's correct.
Okay, but the other side is single-family houses. And then going eastbound, there's a lot of mansions. That seems to be going pretty far up the road, but I mean, it's all just kind of big mansions there. What I'm trying to say is that these areas make sense to me, the areas that are the light pink. And I just want to confirm, so when we had the sort of a briefing on this a little while ago, and there were some issues around, there was big circles around the areas. It wasn't as specific. And we said, are you going to go in and look at each area and be a little more specific with regards to what's appropriate? Is that what this is? Because it looks to me like it's not a circle. It's, yeah, you're going to go down, like looking at Seafair, for example, Seafair Mall. Across the street, you've got Apple Green anyway. So you've got the pink encompassing that. And then just west of Seafair Mall, there's already apartments there. So you've got it there. And then you've got it going a little bit down one road, but it's not going into the single family neighborhood. So you have adjusted it according to what the feedback we gave, right?
Yes, that is correct.
Yeah, so I agree with them all, and I hear what, the concern with what if it gets built out all the way. But I do think that council is always very good at hearing when a proposal comes forward, based on the circumstance of that exact particular house and how high the building is going to be, that we are very good at being, that's not appropriate, we need to tear it down. And I did appreciate the updated map on what the shading and everything would look like with the setbacks. I think it looked really reasonable. The one question I have about the tier 2 so the local villages tier 2, I understand. What I don't quite understand is the neighborhood residential tier 2, so that's the lighter yellow. Because I don't see anywhere where that applies except just like around the parks. Is that what I'm seeing around, for example, if you, like along where Edgewater Park is, I guess that is. Oh no, that would be the Springmonts. Is that the light pink, yellow color?
Through the chair to Councilor Glanders, yes, Edgewater Park's a good example. It's a lighter yellow on the maps, and it's essentially the sort of the older townhouses, apartments. A lot of them were built in the 70s. Those are considered as tier 2 in the neighborhood residential.
Oh, I got you. So you took the areas that were already like the Springmont townhouses and all those, and you said since there's already townhouses there, that's neighborhood tier 2, and it doesn't really change the existing single-family neighborhoods. Okay. That makes sense to me. So then just that's great. One question on the ESA map. Just want to know how this works, because I just noticed, for example, if you go over to number 9 Road and Westminster Highway. Oh, was I looking at this upside down? You know what? Maybe I was looking at it upside down. Oh, no, is that Westminster Highway there? Yeah, okay. So if you look at Westminster Highway and number 9 Road, that's all ESA. That entire thing is that the Dillon property that was the cannabis farm in the ground, and then the white part would be their greenhouse. So how is that green ESA when it was being farmed? So you can farm it if it's ESA, and then the ESA doesn't get removed?
Through the chair to Councilor Glanders, in these situations, there's usually land that was farmed and has become fallow and hasn't been farmed recently.
Because it came fallow, okay.
It then will get labeled as ESA.
Oh, okay.
If they come back and wish to continue farming it, then that's fine. It would be exempted from the ESA.
Okay, yeah, I just wanted to see how that worked. All right, that makes sense. That's it for me for now, thanks.
Okay, we'll go to Councilor Liu and then back to Councilor Keith.
Thank you, through the chair. Couple questions. So kind of talking about those ESAs and the agricultural properties. So as you were saying, if you didn't farm it, it went fallow, then it goes back into the ESA. But if you're going to farm it, but you still have to then go back through the process of having a farm plan. You can't just be like, well, now I'm the younger generation of dad got old and I'm just going to go back to what we were doing before.
Right, through the chair to Councilor Liu, what I would say to that, I mean, if they've previously farmed it or they're farming other parts of the property, it would be a very straightforward process. If they're a new farmer, we do typically request a farm plan or just some assurance that they're going to be farming and that we have a record of that. As far as issuing an exemption, that is not a lengthy process at all.
Okay, so we're trying to get them going on that.
Yes.
So down on 195, it talks about if you have an ag property, and if you do have significant ESA, and there is nowhere to put your house, then what? Because it says you can put your house, but not on the ESA part, but if the whole thing's green, then what?
Through the chair to Councilor Liu, so first off, we'd certainly look at ideal locations for the farm home plate. In some cases, there might have been an old house there, so that area has been kind of cleared. So we do our best to ensure that the farm home plate is an area of the least amount of disturbance. Sometimes there's a variance required. If the entire site is like fully forested, then in those situations, we would probably require a QEP, or at least a bit more of a detailed analysis of what's being removed. It's always going to be dependent. Like if the entire site is going to be completely cleared because it's going to be farmed, you essentially just have a remnant forested area. Then we would just have to look at to see if that forested area is connected to a larger ecosystem or not. So it's really going to depend on the situation whether we need to require a QEP. Most cases with the farm home plate, we will not require a QEP. Staff will be able to provide that resource first. And then if it's a high habitat value, then perhaps in some of those extreme situations, we might need to have a professional look at how to compensate.
Okay. What if, you've got your agricultural property, your next door neighbor has let his go fallow. Now there's all these invasive, European trees birch trees on it. And now half of them have died, so now it's all brush, and you think it's gonna be a fire hazard. Now this guy's gonna go through an ESA to trim some of that back. Like, how do we make this work? Like, at what point, because I can go and complain to my neighbor in my subdivision that they've let it get overgrown, they have to maintain the property. But what happens in that situation?
Through the chair to Councillor Liu, so one thing that we've made really clear is that the removal of invasive species does not require an ESA DP. So blackberry, that type of thing, we're making that a much clearer process and to enable that to happen.
Okay, what about like things like European beech or whatever, the birch trees? Like, some are not, we talk about these established forests, but if it's not native species, is it still an established forest? There's clearly animals living there, so there's a habitat, if you will, but
So
what?
Through the chair to Councillor Liu, in a lot of those situations, we'd probably have one of our own staff, go to do a site visit, determine high level, like, is there a sensitive habitat there that should be left alone? Next level is, maybe a QEP, but in most situations, we wouldn't require that because I believe our staff can provide that analysis and advice. And then an exemption would be provided in those situations. Something that was never provided in clear language before.
Okay. I'm going to make a referral about the ESAs after this, but I think what we've done here is we've made it easier in many cases to move forward, right? Like it talks about the DP, you can build a shed, you can do some things within this space without going through all the hoops and rigmarole. Okay. My other question is, or I have two more questions. So there was the question about the high street. What's the difference between what you say a high street is and something like Blundell Center?
So through the chair, the level of work that's in the OCP right now just identifies generally an area.
Okay.
So the work that staff have done on a very preliminary basis is to identify what might be the most preferred street within one of those areas to develop as a high street. So if you look at Steveston, for example, virtually all of the streets down within the conservation area would qualify as high streets. But in a lot of these other areas, like the suggestion around Blundell Center, would be that one of these streets is going to end up having more opportunity. So part of the work that we propose to do as a next stage is go out and consult with people to do with the villages and the shopping areas that are in their neighborhoods and see how they use the area, what the opportunities are. In some cases, it will be because the intent is not to create a situation where the shopping center must redevelop in order to start to create a village. We want to be able to support incremental development opportunities. So it might be looking at where are the other frontages that are near the shopping center that show the greatest opportunity to support that sort of walkable environment. So we need to work with transportation. We need to figure out how we can provide wider sidewalks, bike paths, connections into neighborhoods. So we've got a lot of different factors that we need to look at. So each village is potentially going to end up being different. And then over time, they will grow and change. So whatever seems to be the right idea in 2026, as the areas start to develop, each will take their own character on, and some will become larger areas, they might become more complex, and others will just stay small and really be something that's just a node that's supporting the immediate community.
Okay. We haven't really defined anywhere that would be outside of, say, Duck Island, right? That would be, say, an entertainment district? So like for nightclubs and dancing and that kind of stuff, right? So like somehow you're going off into like no man's land if that hasn't even been built yet. And who knows what's going to happen. But we haven't really created a space where you could have your nightclubs, you could have your pubs, it's maybe your noisy area. The residential spaces would be facing in other directions so they're not listening to everybody come out of the bars at night. Like, we haven't sort of imagined anywhere like that,
So through the
like in this OCP.
Yes, so through the chair to Councillor Liu, at this point, you're quite correct, we're not identifying outside the city center any areas like that. The CCAP, the existing CCAP, identifies both the Bridgeport Village area and the Aberdeen area. Bridgeport primarily, because of course it already had the casino when we put the plan together, but also Aberdeen. And both of them, for exactly the reasons that you've pointed out, they provide very unique opportunities to support nightlife without having, the neighbors living upstairs. So that will something that the plan is still pursuing and we will continue to support. And but there's no intent to expand it outside the city center at this time. The focus is on more of a family-friendly, neighborhood-friendly kind of experience in these villages outside the city center.
Okay, like, if I'm 21 years old, that sounds kind of boring, right? So, my age, it doesn't matter because everyone has to go to bed early. But if we think where people are actually going out late in the evening, it's a little more fun. It's on Alexandra Road, right? And so do we really want to, Councillor McNulty's brought forward that concept of what do we look at here? Is it some industrial, what do we actually want to do there? Because it seems to me that there's already sort of a hip and trendy hangout space. Can we sort of double down on that and can we reconsider that in this OCP for that? Because I think that's maybe our opportunity. If we're thinking what else we're going to do in the residential area around it, people could walk to it, they could have a good time, but it's designed a different way so that people aren't listening and complaining that it's right outside their window. They realize that's the zone, that's what it's being built for. Now is the time to maybe have that consideration and dive a little deeper into it, yeah?
Through the chair to Councillor Liu, one thing I'll add is that there will be additional consultation with all the local villages. And I mean, there may be opportunities through that conversation to identify, Toom Blundell or Ironwood or whatever the appropriate place may be, that there might be a desire to have some kind of destination restaurant or entertainment district, maybe within certain parameters. But I mean, that can certainly be part of that discussion.
I don't know, or special dining area that everybody comes and there's a special dining. And my final question is, a couple of years ago, we passed a rule that you can only have, 2.5 stories adjacent to the dikes. And so, essentially what we've done here, we've got some of these neighborhood residential, like the Edgewater Village that came up, and we're still limiting it to 3 stories. I'm wondering if we thought about it differently. We didn't necessarily have to change the FAR significantly, but you could allow it to go higher because you're going to have higher dikes. So then there's more incentive to tuck the parking right under, go higher so you can see over and enjoy the view. And then you're still saving more green space in your whole complex for sort of supplying your own residents with park space. So would we consider doing things like that? We've already heard from some people that are freaking out because the dike's going to get raised and they're going to look at a wall. If we allowed them to go higher, it creates more opportunity for sort of a cooler situation along those dikes.
Through the chair to Councillor Liu, yes, there's definitely opportunity for those sites. In fact, I believe it's 3 or 4 stories, and with increased affordability, it could be up to 5 or 6. So in those situations, absolutely, you could increase the building height, and there's more flexibility for those sites.
Okay,
So we could consider it, but it's not cooked into it to say like, hey, you could do these, you could go higher. Like, why don't we just say, like, why don't we just make another tier where it's the same one, but you can go 4 stories and have a good time? Can we do that? Does it matter? Or do I have to ask for it later?
Yeah, through the chair to Councillor Liu, so that would be considered tier 2 in the neighborhood residential. It would allow up to 3 stories.
Right, but let's
and
make
up
it
to-
4, right? Like,
And it could be up to 4 or even up to 6
oh, is that, okay, that's. what it
if
says.
there's rental or increased affordability, lemur units and that type of thing. So it's an incentive-based approach to get more rental. If it's a mixed tenure or strata, then at this point, the guideline would be 3 stories.
Okay,
So,
okay.
all subject to rezoning.
okay,
Yeah.
thank you.
Councillor Heed.
Yes, thank you, Mayor. I don't want to confuse the matter, but originally I wanted to talk about what Councillor Hobbs brought up, but just on the ESA thing. So I'm hearing you saying that if it's invasive species, if it's on your lands, you can remove it, it's not subject to ESA. Did I hear that correctly?
Through the chair to Councillor Heed, that's correct. It would be an exemption from our ESA guidelines.
That's new?
That is correct.
That is absolutely new.
Yes.
So private property, good. Great, thank you. So I want to talk a little bit about the local villages because I'm having some difficulty understanding what we're trying to do here with the various tiers. And I know, or I hope, we're not looking for a cookie cutter approach to each area where we have these local villages. And I think you've indicated to me that there's going to be further consultation with the neighborhood to determine what we do, because if you recall in the meeting that we had, we talked about going to the center of the intersection and then going out from there. So there's no concentric circle. We're going down the major roads to determine what it is. So let me run a scenario by you. On the shopping center property per se, if they wanted to build a larger, could be 5 or 6 stories or even taller on their property, what would be our response to them with respect to that? Because we're already starting to increase the density within that particular area, because if they're going to build on that property, would we have the ability then to determine what is going to be built in the tier 2?
Through the chair to Councillor Reid, if you could just repeat that final question.
So let's go with Williams at Broadmoor. Let's go with Broadmoor, okay? Everyone can see that. So the owners of Broadmoor Shopping Center want to build housing on their property per se. They want to go whatever level of property to increase the density within that area. How would we look at then the tiers with respect to that? Because they're on their property, they're coming forward, they're wanting to do that. What would we do with the going down 3 Road or going down Williams, either way?
Through the chair to Councillor Heed, so for the actual shopping centers, that would be considered a tier 1 in the local villages, which allows 4 stories. It does allow 5 or 6 if there's, once again, increased affordability, if it's 100% rental, if there's lemur below market. The commercial would have to be a component of that intersection, because that's really the hub of the neighborhood. What I would say is that it would probably emulate some of the redevelopments you see in Vancouver, where you're going from more auto-based to a much more urban village feel. So that would be tier 1, and the way the OCP map is proposed is essentially it's a shopping center and any immediate adjacent either apartments or properties just adjacent to that shopping center. Outside of that, it's then considered tier 2 along the arterial road, and it varies in distance, sometimes up to 400 meters, sometimes a little bit less. And then the next designation is the tier 1 arterial connector, which is very similar to the tier 2 local village. They both promote townhouses. The difference is negligible.
So my concern here is the excessive amount we're going to have there. When I read this, I understand the tier 1, the tier 2, but if, for example, and I'm just throwing this out as an example, Broadmoor is going to build, 3 or 4 complexes, rental, whatever number of stories with commercial on the bottom, and then now we're looking at the tier 2, you could see that there's going to be quite a dense, if it's built out, a densely populated area. Do we have any control over the tier 2 part of it at that point?
Through the chair to Councillor Heed, I mean, tier 2, the designation once again allows sort of a step density, not the same as tier 1. It would be less. It provides a guideline and promotes, I guess, increased development within a mixed-use node so that it's walkable. There's plenty different uses all within that sort of neighborhood. And as you go further away, the densities go down.
So I understand that, but we've got nothing to limit it then. We've got nothing really to limit the density within a particular area, within a particular village. It's ipso facto. By that very fact, they can build out.
Wayne Craig wants to have a word.
Thank you. Through the chair to Councillor Heed. Just to add to what John has conveyed, in terms of the OCP sets a very high-level framework. Ultimately, any redevelopment would require rezoning applications to be brought forward to council for their consideration and approval. In terms of the villages, Broadmoor is actually a very good example of the concept that we are discussing here. The rental building that I believe is above the Shoppers Drug Mart is an example of the type of redevelopment, as is the development, which is kitty corner to the mall, where you have retail at grade and for 3 stories of apartments above.
So I guess back to my point is, Wayne, we've got no way of controlling the density within that area. For example, and I'm just saying example, Broadmoor was going to build on their property 4 distinct buildings similar to what the Shoppers is. And then we can still build out tier 2 up to 400 meters at a lower level.
Yes, but each of those applications would come forward to council for consideration. Council would need to agree to those applications. Through the application process, we would be looking at all the things that we would typically look at: traffic, transportation, servicing, utilities, all of those things.
So we will have a say at the end of the day, if in fact that's going to happen. Hopefully we have some control. Have we looked at and I think Councillor Hobbs was alluding to this, of rather than going 400 meters out, have we looked at something that starts to descend at a more rapid rate than 400 meters? Or is it possible?
Through the chair to Councillor Heed, yes. I mean, original concept when this went out for public consultation was actually 800 meters, so it's been dialed down quite a bit. What I would say too is in some cases the tier 2 extends out to 400 meters. Some cases it's actually quite a bit less, especially if the shopping center is near the dike. For example, Terra Nova, it doesn't extend westward or northward, just south and east. Other areas does extend either 400 meters or wherever the natural block might land. So and the last thing I'll just add too is with the consultation that we're proposing to do afterwards, we would then look at each of those villages and see if there's blocks that we can complete or how we could maybe adjust the area.
Perfect. Thank you.
Councillor Day?
Oh, boy. Thank you very much, Mayor Brody. I got to start with the beginning, which is we're being asked, staff recommendation to give first reading to this, but this is also just the first installment, that there's more information coming. I think you said February, give or take, 2026.
Well, or through the chair to Councillor Day, the second installment would probably be later in the year, probably around June. A little bit difficult to land on a date because of some of the other commitments that we need to complete. But what I would say is this package here deals with the housing and a lot of the requirements from the province. So this is definitely a significant change. The rest of it will be complementary policies, but dealing more with environmental and equity related issues.
Okay, so this isn't done. This is just the first phase then?
Right.
Okay, and then I understand Metro has a deadline in January or June 2026, right?
Through the chair to Councillor Day, so Metro has a deadline, basically, they had requested end of the year for regional context statements to be accepted by the board. We've had conversations with staff there, and most of the regional context statements will be considered by the board in early new year, and that's fine as long as we're making progress.
Okay, well, we saw in the news that Burnaby saw their first, I think it was sixplex going up, and everybody's freaking out, going, oh my goodness, that's way taller than I thought it was going to be. So they're in the process of revising it, but we're not there, are we? Like, do we not have a height restriction of 10 meters?
Through the chair to Councillor Day, you are correct. 10 meters is the maximum height. We designed the RSM zone to be 2.5 stories with 10-meter maximum.
Yeah.
There has been a few modifications to the zoning moving forward. I think for Burnaby's case, they might have not experienced the land use contract a scenario here in Richmond. I think we've learned from that, and that's why the RSM zone is the way it is.
Thank goodness we killed that a long time ago. Okay, so is there any specific options for middle-income housing reserved for first responders and medical staff? Specific.
Through the chair to Councillor Day, and I'll probably let Suzanne add to this too, I'll use the example of the hospital district where we have a village center bonus in that area to try to encourage housing for first responders and also have space for medical clinics and create a hospital precinct so that workers who do work there can live nearby. We have other areas across the land use map that would encourage additional, we're calling it essential housing, like I say, essentially for, whether it's nurses, doctors, or especially teachers and that type of thing, to ensure that there's housing there for that demographic. And I don't know, Suzanne, anything else to add to that particular policy?
Through the chair to Councillor Day, I think John's covered most of it. The intent of including the policy to do with essential housing is basically to signal to the public, to developers, to groups like the hospital and everybody in general that this is something that the city wants to advocate for. So in other words, try to create partnerships, try to create opportunities, whether it is with the hospital, with Coastal Health, or with the universities, to find ways to provide housing that doesn't fit the normal mold. So it might be looking at housing where the units are particularly small, but that's really well suited to seniors or to students or to workers that are working on shifts, or student housing, which doesn't fit our normal mold because they're often shared facilities that might even have common kitchens. So these are things that have not been specifically identified in our OCP before, so they're being highlighted now with the intent to set the stage for future work.
So set the stage but not require.
Correct.
Okay. Is there, I want to kind of get into the same question, but are there options for us to create specific rental tenure zoning so we can control the price of the land so it doesn't keep going up and up and up?
So through the chair to Councillor Day, rental is one of the things that is strongly encouraged through the plan. And as we've just been discussing, there's opportunities to increase density where rental is secured through a development. So that would be secured through residential rental tenure zoning. If there was an affordability component in it, such as Lemur, then there would be potentially a housing agreement in addition to that. So that's definitely a foundational principle of what we're doing.
Again, it's not like specific zoning on a specific area saying this is what you're building. This is more of a suggestion and encouragement at that point to the developers.
Thank you. Through the chair to Councillor Day, I would just add to the discussion that in terms of rental tenure zoning, the policies which are already included in the OCP, such as existing rental sites must remain rental, that stays. As part of those rental protections, we did apply rental tenure zoning to existing rental buildings. There is no change to those policies either. So the efforts made by council to date to retain, protect, and encourage redevelopment of rental sites as rental only remain in place with this OCP update.
And I think that's a good first step, but we're not taking the next step, which is to basically say an area will be rental tenure, or maybe that's coming. So on page 12, it states that 299 very low-cost units are required annually. That's a tough one to build. What is the province offering or promising at this point? Don't smile, Wayne.
Yeah, through the chair to Councillor Day, yeah, at this point in time, it doesn't come with any kind of dollar. There's a lot of work going on behind the scenes to basically apply for funding and to look at city-owned lands and opportunities there to basically have partnerships and to build more non-market housing. So it is a guideline, that 299 is part of the housing needs report, but it certainly gives you a sense of what's required on an annual basis.
I know we're doing everything we can, but, you know, I was just at the seniors workshop the other day, and it's really sad. I mean, when 25% of our homeless are seniors, we got a problem. And we got to do more with the province and the nonprofits, but I know we're doing what we can. Thank you. And page 75 and 76, it talks about the 2.5-story SHMU rental, and the maximum height, I understand, is 10 meters. But when I look at the drawings, it seems like there's a little more flexibility than I like. Even when you've got a single-family neighborhood and you're building, whether it's a commercial building with apartments up above or you're building townhouses, I think the 10-meter is really critical to stick to. Are we going to have that threatened in Tier 2 or 3 next to single-family areas?
Through the chair to Councillor Day, I mean, for Tier 2 and in the local village, the maximum height is 13 meters as proposed. For Tier 1 arterial connector, I believe it's 12 meters, so you're looking at a difference of maybe 2 to 3 meters for the arterial properties versus the SHMU properties, which the SHMU is maximum 10. So, and plus your setback distance will provide enough distance so that you're reducing the massing and ensuring that there's solar, you know, that you're not being completely shaded year-round. So that work has been done. And as far as the SHMU properties are concerned, we anticipate they would stay at 10 meters unless we're told otherwise by the province.
Okay, so if I go to page 89, it's got the triangle where we're only going to be, I think it's 10 meters at the back, but 18 meters potentially at the front. But what concerns me is the 6-meter setback is so small. Like the reason Williams and number 3 works is because everything's pushed forward to Williams Road. And I haven't heard any complaints from the people who live on the other side of those fences. So I don't think 6 meters is enough setback when you're talking single family on the other side.
Through the chair to Councillor Day. So the 6-meter setback is fixed, but then it works hand in hand with the envelope. So the taller that someone is going to take the building, the more that's going to generally push the building further towards the arterial road. So as you can see, it's basically it rises at the back in a straight line, the envelope, and then the envelope goes at 45 degrees. So if you go up another 3 meters, you have to set back another 3 meters. You're at 9 meters. If you go up, and it keeps going that way. So it's going to keep pushing the higher part of the building further and further towards the front of the street. And that's a key part of ensuring that not only we reduce overlook, but we also make sure that if you've got these larger buildings to the south of the smooth zoned properties, that generally the shadows would not be any more than what you would see with a 6-foot fence in the backyard. Like, you're not going to increase the shadowing. And then, as John had mentioned previously, it also, with the 6 meters in the backyard, it allows for tree planting and so on. So that means that these buildings that are going to be commercial mixed-use buildings are actually going to add to the landscape in these areas, not just simply say, we're commercial, we're just going to build up really close, pave everything in the back. So it's very intentional that we're trying to provide these opportunities for a form of development that would complement the smaller scale SMOO that would be nearby.
So you're saying that council has a final say on like the composition and the massing? Good, because if those designs came before me, I got to tell you right now, there's no way I'd vote for them because 6 meters isn't near enough. I don't care how much of a triangle you build. So that's exactly what I was hoping you would say, that, you know, it's going to be adapted. This is just
massing.
It's just massing.
Have you got a lot more, Councillor Day?
Just a couple more.
Just a couple more we'll give you.
Well, hold on. Everybody else got to ask a page full of questions. I'm not allowed to?
I'll give you a couple more.
No, forget it. Never mind. Nothing I say is obviously important.
Okay, well, it's up to you. Counselor Glanders.
Thanks, Your Worship. Just a quick question on the, Councillor Heed mentioned the tier 1 and the local villages. So on top of the shopping center, and so that's purple 4-story. So look, I just want to, how does that, with Blundell and 2 Road? There was high rises there, like 8 stories and above. So are they non-conforming now? Or is there like a different, how does that work?
I will just take a quick look. I believe those properties, through the chair to Councillor Glanders, double check.
Is that the village overlay?
Yeah, so
Oh, okay.
there is an overlay there, so
Okay.
that would be consistent with that.
So
yeah.
whenever there's anything that's outside of that, it's a village overlay, something that's already established?
Right.
Oh, gotcha. Okay, thanks.
Okay, Counselor Wolf.
Thanks. I've been trying to find it. I'm pretty certain I saw it in here yesterday. If there is a invasive species removal that's going to happen on a fairly large scale, that the owner is intended to let staff know so staff can check to see ecological value on site? Somewhere in here.
Through the chair to Councillor Wolf, yes, that would be the best practice, is that we're aware of it. We would have one of our staff do a site visit.
Yeah, so it's not like, yes, if you have a little bit of blackberry or something, you can remove it, but if you're doing like a month-long process of removing it, that you're not taking out all the elderberry and the salmonberry and all the other things with it, and choosing the right time of year to do that kind of work, yeah. I remember at the staff workshop on this a few months back, you mentioned that there were some things in the target areas that were able to be brought forward to council without approval, the final approval of the OCP? Are some of those coming, or have we seen some of them already?
Through the chair to Councillor Wolf, hopefully I answer your question here. So there's some other elements of the targeted update will be brought forward in the new year. They're not related to the deadlines from the province. So we were compelled to bring forward this package by the end of the year, largely because of the housing policies.
Okay, yeah, thanks. So I was just wondering in case I missed some that you were referring to back then. Well, I guess just 2 more short ones here. It mentions in the OCP sections, there's 1.7, it's on page 54, reconciliation enrichment. It's the only one that kind of stands out as being like, here's a little blurb, but no next steps or no real action. It does say that the city's committed, but why not like explicitly say that we've hired and we're going to be hiring again, Indigenous Relations Manager. We're going to draft phase, almost at the draft phase of Indigenous Relations Strategy. Like, would those things not help to support this, or is that going to come in a later version of this?
Through the chair to Councillor Wolf, I believe Ms. Leska has a response.
Serena?
Thank you. Through the mayor to Councillor Wolf. Yes, just for the exact reasons that you just described, we're still in the process of developing the Indigenous Relations Strategy, and we didn't want to presuppose what we might say about our direction prior to finishing up that strategy and seeking council's approval. So once that is done, then we would likely be updating that section in the OCP to reflect the strategy as it's approved by council.
Right, great. I'll leave it there. Thanks.
Okay, Counselor McNulty.
Yeah, just quickly, your response to Councillor Day on the 10-meter height and given to in Blundell. Are you telling me we'd never build another tower there of 8-10 stories because of the height restriction? Because that's basically what you said, and I have a little concern about that.
Let him answer.
Through the chair to Councillor McNulty, I'm a little unclear which site you're talking about.
Well,
Two in
when you
Blundell?
answered about the 10-meter height, you were talking about the 2 in Blundell.
No.
towers at the village
That's right,
Yeah.
but in the back, there are towers.
Yes.
If they were to be replaced or there was room to build more, would we not build more?
Through the chair to Councillor McNulty, yes, I believe we would. And the overlay on that section would allow that ability to either rebuild a tower or something of a similar density.
What about an area like Apple Green?
Through the chair to Councillor McNulty, that area is in Tier 1. Actually, it's partly Tier 1 and Tier 2 of the local village neighborhood type. So there would be ability to rebuild what you see there.
go up.
And you could go up to 6 stories maximum.
I don't think we should ever restrict airspace if we've got a chance to go up airspace and the quality of life. If I may, Your Worship, procedure now, you're asking for first reading. What, if we support it or don't support it, if we support it, what happens next? It goes to public hearing?
Through the chair to Councillor McNulty, yes, it would go to public hearing in January.
Well, it would go,
Not
it'll
after.
go to council.
Council, sorry.
Well, go to council.
Correct.
But
Yes.
it would go to public hearing before we go to Metro.
That is correct. So
I'm
the
just following process here, Your Worship.
So the steps would be, if this is granted first reading next Monday by council.
Right.
It would go to the next public hearing, which would be scheduled January 19th. At the same time, we would also forward the regional context statement to Metrovan board. They would not consider it till likely their last meeting in January. So what that would mean is following public hearing in January, council would be asked to put off final adoption until Metrovan has accepted the regional context statement.
What if there were changes or suggested at the public hearing?
Right.
And Metrovan already has it?
Through the chair to Councillor McNulty, if there were changes or if anything went sideways, we would let Metro Vancouver know. They would pull that item from the agenda.
Okay, I think we need that process laid out, Your Worship. Thank you.
Maybe we could get a memo on that process. if you
Sure.
want.
And let the public know.
Yeah. Councillor Day.
On single-family lots, if there's a house, a small bungalow or something, and they decide to come in and give you an application to build a big mega house, can we turn it down and say, no, you got to build Schmeal?
Through the chair to Councillor Day, no, as long as if they're consistent with the zoning, they could build a single-family house, provided they meet the zoning criteria.
Okay, it says on, so the provincial government has made all these changes in these bills, and there's been a lot of public consultation. Has that resulted in any changes to the bill?
Through the chair to Councillor Day, no, the bill has not changed.
Okay, and when I look at page 25, we talk about the consultation process, and it lists, the school board and various other organizations, but what about the public?
Oh, through the chair to Councillor Day, yes, we've had many consultation opportunities with the public, open houses, Let's Talk Richmond, you name it, yeah.
Is there more coming?
Through the chair to Councillor Day, we don't have any scheduled public consultation except for the public hearing that would be scheduled for these bylaw amendments.
Okay, so we're going to be encouraging more rental housing, but we're not going to be guaranteeing it. It's just hoping that they like the design and they like the plans and.
Well, through the chair to Councillor Day, what I would say is that the OCP just provides that guidance. It isn't prescriptive. This is going to provide that framework so that applications can come forward that are consistent with the OCP that would provide, what we're hoping is the policies will actually encourage, incentivize more rental.
We have a great example at Williams in number 3 of a really great design, I think. Is there any way we can have pre-approved plans to fast-track the process?
Through the chair to Councillor Day, that's certainly one aspect of the implementation of this OCP is having pre-approved plans. There's been a lot of work through Metro Vancouver in the province in that, and we are reviewing those plans and hope to use them in the near future.
So it's not there, but we're working on it.
Correct.
What kind of timeline are we looking at?
Through the chair to Councillor Day, I don't believe I can say an exact time, but we've been working closely with Metro Vancouver for the past year. We have some challenges, obviously, with laneways, and we have some unique characteristics with our lot sizes that don't always fit the mold, say what happens in Vancouver. So we are working on creating sort of a made in Richmond approach. I would hope that we'll have something that we can discuss with council in the new year.
Okay, and if there are schools that are at risk of closing or have been in the past, is there any possibility of densifying around the perimeter of the school? Like you've got single-family homes, you could easily put in maybe townhouses or something to put in more housing and possibly more kids.
Yeah, through the chair to Councillor Day, certainly every school is going to have a different layout, and it's something that could be pursued. I think right now those areas are zoned for multiplexes and in most cases could have 4 units per lot. So they're already been granted an opportunity to densify. If someone wished to consolidate a bunch of properties and come in for a rezoning, that is possible. We would have to look at the OCP to see if that could fit or not, but we haven't had any discussions of that nature.
So strictly the 4 units as opposed to townhouses, okay? And detail and form are critical, but it sounds like we'll be able to prove that through council, because I think the devil's in the details, so. And one last question. So we were talking about the airplane map on page 57. The Oaks is potentially going to be far more densified, but if you look at the map of the YVR flight plan, it's still, I mean, that area, there's, you know, the airport has control. So we're going to be able to get away with higher height in the Oaks area?
Through the chair to Councillor Day, certainly YVR will have a say in the maximum building height.
Yeah.
I don't know how that's affected specifically for that neighborhood, but we will certainly be in consultation with YVR when we're looking at densifying that area, whatever that area plan may look like. We would ensure that they would be part of that consultation.
Wouldn't that have been good to do before all this?
Through the chair to Councillor Day, well, that consultation hasn't begun yet with the Oaks. If this OCP is adopted, we will then start that consultation in the spring.
Horse and cart, okay, thank you.
Look, yeah, go.
Of Richmond with page 57, superimposed so we see the colors on the streets. Like when I look at this, the yellow on area 4 at the bottom, I can see the lines, but the names of the streets, so that we can see where area 3 is and area 2 is. Like where does that cut?
Sure.
If we could have more explanation, but probably the original materials would have some of
Very
that.
small.
And you're going to be
Yeah.
digging those out.
We through the chair, we could certainly circulate a larger version if you like. So, yeah.
It would help.
All
And-
right.
And the print is right. We'll do
Yeah.
small.
If this is adopted today, are we going to council on Monday with it? That's the idea.
Correct.
Okay, and my other question is about the very last one, number 8, following bylaws will receive third reading. Can you just remind us what those two projects are, 9040 Francis and 9000 number 3? Josh, help us out?
I can move.
Through the chair, those, one of the sites is 9040 Francis, located at Francis and Garden City Road. That was a site that was approved for a 100% rental building with commercial at grade.
Francis and Garden City, okay. Sorry? Oh, Danny's Market, that's it.
Yeah.
Okay, and the other one?
And the other site is at number 3 Road and Francis, 9000 number 3 Road. This is the development of a former gas station, again, for a 100% rental building with some below-market rental units and commercial space on the ground floor.
Yeah, the one that Panatch has, that group. Okay,
correct.
that helps.
And to the chair, both those sites would be considered then Tier 2 arterial connector. That's what they'd be redesignated to, so we'll get that done first and then consideration of adoption of the OCP.
Okay, can I get a motion? Moved and seconded. Further discussion? Councillor Hobbs?
Yeah, thanks through the chair. I won't be supporting the recommendation tonight, and I'm not going to repeat everything else, but I'll just say this. If you think of Tier 2, you combine it with the arterial road policy, you're talking about 3-story townhouses front and back, and you're talking the potential for 4-story rental buildings butting into various neighborhoods. And for me, I think that's too high to have carte blanche. When we talk about the Williams and number 3 Road building, that is a really good location, or the two that the chair just mentioned. Those are all on corners. They're not going down the roads. So if it's combined, if the whole thing is together, I'll be voting no. Thank you.
I don't know what we would take out of here, but if this does get approved, you might work with staff to see if there's a refinement that could be proposed for the council meeting. Even though time is short, it can be done. Okay, I'll call the question then. All those in favor? Those opposed? That is carried with Councillors Day and Hobbs opposed. Okay, and Counselor Liu, you had something more?
I wanted to do a referral on ESAs, because I think, I personally have a little bit of lack of history on them because I wasn't here when they first came in. So just three things: how the ESAs came to be, like a short history of that, how they've evolved over time. So they started as something, they've evolved. I think if this passes, it's evolving into a less onerous regime. And then if we could sort of understand what the impacts on development have been. I think we've all had complaints about ESAs of different things. And so I think to understand how the impacts cost and time, so if we get some sort of report on that. We don't need it before this.
You're not talking about for Monday?
No. I think.
Do we have that in some kind of a report or a memo form?
Yeah, to the chair, I think we could assemble, a package of information, say prior to public hearing.
Okay.
We're talking about a history of, yeah.
Thanks.
All right, so you're moving that referral, is it seconded? Moved and seconded. For more information, Counselor McNulty on this, on the referral? Okay, all those in favor of the referral? Any opposed?
Thank you.
That's carried. Counselor McNulty.
For Monday, Your Worship, I know it's short time and a lot of work has gone, but there were a lot of concerns that round the table. And I think we should have some answers to them before we go to Monday, before council, even in the memo, just to address them, to make sure that we have it. And much of it is clarification as opposed to, if we were confused here and didn't understand it, the public sure, I won't say the public won't, but they could not understand it as well. So there were some very good points brought around the table.
Maybe I could start with, have you made any notes on exactly what you're going to be giving to us between now and then?
To the chair, I will work through with the clerk's department, review obviously the audio and video, and we can make some determination of areas that we could provide some clarity.
Clarification.
Sure.
And obviously, time is short. Sorry about that.
But this is major. This is our life for the future, so we should be prudent. Thank you.
Yeah, we want to get it right. Okay, anything else? Someone want to move adjournment? Okay, we're adjourned.